Good morning, everyone. Welcome. We'll give a few seconds for everyone to log in properly with Zoom. We'll have more people coming in, but I will also start already with a brief welcome and introduction. So welcome, good morning. Welcome to this webinar and mutual learning session organized by the DiGiN project. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So this webinar and mutual learning session is titled Advancing LGBTIQ+ Inclusion in City Administration, Insights from the City of Vienna. This is part of DiGiN's ongoing inclusion, inside inclusion, campaign that is taking place now, and it's offered in collaboration with the City of Vienna. My name is Panayota Polikarpou. I'm a member of the Yellow Window team, one of the partners of the DiGiN project. Allow me to start with a few ground rules, housekeeping rules. During the webinar, please keep your microphones muted, but keep your camera on. If possible, it would be great to see some faces. Note that this webinar is recorded, but your faces and names will not be shown, and neither the Q&A session at the end. This will not be included in the recording after all. You are welcome to share your questions in the chat box, and we will address them during the Q&A session at the end. I will have a short introduction for the DiGiN project, so you get to know our work and how you can be involved and benefited from what we do. So DiGiN is an EU-funded project with the mission to transform how local governments embrace and integrate the principles of DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion, in order to make a more inclusive and equitable and diverse communities. So we implement this mission through 5 key objectives: by empowering change agents through capacity building activities that facilitate institutional transformation towards mainstreaming the principles of DEI, by mobilizing employees through coalition building and affinity networks, by equipping municipalities with tools and knowledge on how to integrate an intersectional employee perspective into decision-making process to strengthen their work on DEI, and by also developing the long-term sustainable DEI strategies, and by improving evaluation tools in order to enhance the effectiveness of DEI interventions. So why DiGiN matters to municipalities? Because as we know, municipalities shape community life through local policies and services, and they are key to foster inclusive governance that reflects diverse communities. And importantly, by embedding DEI, we enhance workplace culture and operations. And by leading by examples, municipalities drive societal change beyond the workplace. So as part of this project, we are working closely with 3 municipalities in Europe: the municipality of Rotterdam in the Netherlands, the municipality of Ghent in Belgium, and the municipality of Genoa in Italy. Leiden University of Applied Sciences and Yellow Window support the capacity building of the internal change agents and support with the development of toolkits and other outputs. However, the DiGiN community is not limited to these 3 municipalities, as we aim to engage and mobilize more municipalities in Europe. And that's why we invite you to enroll to our newsletter so you can receive our news, but most importantly, you will receive any outputs and toolkits that the project produces that you can utilize. So you can go ahead and scan the QR code that you see on the screen. We will also share the registration link after the webinar. So we invite you to join this network of municipalities that are committed at fostering DEI and explore with us potential ways of collaboration and mutual exchange similar to today's session. So let's go to the introduction to today's session. So As I said before, this webinar is part of DiGiN's Mutual Exchange series, and we are honored to welcome today Dr. Helga Haberler, officer at the Vienna Anti-Discrimination Office for LGBTIQ Affairs at the City of Vienna. So in this session, Helga will present how the City of Vienna is embedding LGBTIQ inclusion within its internal structures and daily operations. And we will then, after her presentation, have an open Q&A session where you can ask your questions, get more insights from her. So before passing the floor, I'd like to briefly introduce her. Helga holds a master's from the Department of Sociology and a PhD from the Department of Political Science from the University of Vienna. She's a sociologist and political scientist with deep expertise in critical social and political theory, queer and feminist studies, post-colonial theory and disability studies, and intersectionality. Her academic and professional work focuses on analyzing, diagnosing, and transforming structures of power, domination, and social inequality. Before joining the office, she worked across community development, conflict management, individual case support, and child and youth care. She has extensive experience in mentoring, peer mediation, and conflict prevention workshops in schools, as well as developing networking platforms, managing events from small gatherings to internal conferences, and organizing scientific workshops centered on queer, feminist, and post-colonial perspectives. Helga, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you with us. I'll go ahead and switch my slides so you can view your presentation. Just give me a second. We do that. Excellent. It's coming up now. Thank you for waiting. I believe you can now see my screen. And Helga, feel free to tell me when to change the slide. So welcome again. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for that long introduction. You could have shortened it, but thanks a lot. Thank you very much also for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm very fond of always exchanging, throughout Europe, but also in a broader context. So I'm also happy that we have a Q&A at the end. I believe it does never go one way, so we can all always learn from one another and get to know what other cities are doing, other NGOs are doing to improve the situation. As you said, I work for the Viennese Anti-Discrimination Unit for LGBTIQ issues. In German, it's called Vienna Anti-Diskriminierungsstelle für LGBTIQ issues, Angelegenheiten. I'm going to shorten it to VAST, but to that a bit later. I took on your content. That is on the next slide. I took over what was the task that you've given me and just filled it. And I felt a bit free to introduce a bit the history of Vienna in combination with queer people. And then I give a brief structure of the organization of the City of Vienna so that you get an idea where we are placed. The VAST, that is our short term, because our name is not as long as it is in English, but it's also very long, or it's longer in German than it is in English. So a brief contextualization, just a reminder of a bit of a history that we all share in Europe, for example. Then what you suggested was to take a look into the procedures. I divided them a bit into what's the internal procedures and what's the internal external procedures. Concrete activities would be a next point. I also divided them into things that are happening every year or a couple of times a year, and then also event-driven, meaning there is the European Song Contest, for example, that is a one-time thing, so that you get an idea what we do. A very important topic, also the topic of financial support. How to mobilize staff and change agents, that would be another issue that we may discuss today. That's a very difficult task always. in every field I've been, but still it's something that needs to be discussed. Challenges, lessons, and advice. I'm not sure I can give any advice. I'm just trying to find what would be important if we want to change the system sustainably. So just a few points and issues on that. I put together a couple of references that you might want to, look up afterwards. So, and if there's anything urgent, please interrupt. I think it's very interesting also to be interactive. So if there's anything that can't wait, just interrupt. I'm not mad about being interrupted. Then I would start with a little contextualization. Thank you very much for switching the slides. We had a couple of issues at the very beginning, technical issues, so I hope that's fine that way. Just to remind you, Vienna has a long history of migration. I mean, at the very beginning, there were the Romans or the Celtics, the Romans, that's what we all share. And there has been a lot of queer migration coming with the migration to the centers. Vienna has also been a center, like in imperial colonial histories, also in later times, like Freudian times, there was an intellectual high of high culture, and people were coming from all over the colonial and post-colonial cities. So that would be Bohemia, for example, or Moravia, which then later was the Czechoslovakia, the Balkan areas, Hungary. And after World War II, Yugoslavia, Turkey, for example, and then when the EU got larger, many people were coming from Romania, Bulgaria, and of course the wars in Afghanistan, Syria, then later made people migrate. And with all these waves of migration, a lot of queer people also came to Vienna, not just from within Austrian borders. There's also a lot of internal migration. The people come to Vienna from all kinds of countries, from Austria, from within Austria to Vienna, but also from outside, so to speak. In later history, where there is a phase of where LGBTIQ can be more out and less closeted because the persecution got less and less in many countries. So we are at a time of people being out very often, but now we face in Vienna, because of the geopolitical situation, we face many people also fleeing, one has to say that, fleeing Hungary, fleeing Slovakia, saying they can't live there anymore. And just to remind you, we're just a couple of hours away from Budapest, from Warsaw, from Kiev, Bratislava, and so on. And we also experience more migration, and also more queer migration from Uganda, Tanzania, which just recently reinstalled the death penalty. So the situation getting worse means also that also many queer people are still coming to Vienna. So Vienna has been a hotspot for queer migration, and that is still ongoing. So Vienna, in some ways or another, has always dealt with minorities. I just wanted to give you an overview of the city of Vienna, the organization. That would be the next slide. Thank you. There is at the very end, at the references, I put the organization slide on it, but it would be it is actually too small to pin it on a PowerPoint. That's why I shortened it. So just that you get an idea where we are. That's the VAST, the Viennese Anti-Discrimination Unit. The City of Vienna is organized like every other city, with a city council, a city senate, and a mayor. We have 2 vice mayors. And then there are 7 administrative groups and 1 chief executive group office. And we are placed in the administrative group at the moment of education, youth integration, transparency, and Vienna markets. Our head is one city councillor who is at the very moment also vice mayor. Needn't be always the vice mayor. We have also been in departments of the personnel, for example, where you have all the staff covered in. We would also fit in the social department, in the group where all the social stuff is put in. But at the very moment, we're organized together with kindergartens, child youth, and integration. So just that you get an idea. As I said at the very end, if you're interested there is a link to the whole organization if you're interested in what the rest of the groups are. I would like briefly to introduce to you the VAST, the Wiener Anti-Diskriminierungsstelle für LGBTIQ-Angelegenheiten, so the Viennese Anti-Discrimination Unit for LGBTIQ issues, as I said, VAST, short. It's actually not that young anymore. We had, like last year, our anniversary, a bit belated, but we're 27 years old already. They started out just for homosexuals. That was in the title, in the name of the VAST. Then they added transgender to the name. And now we are LGBTIQ in accordance with political social movements. So we're not kind of a satellite, not being connected to social movements. It has always been an interface. That means we are in the middle between NGOs, politics, and the city. And we are networking with all of them, and we are servicing all of them. That makes it a very difficult task, but a very challenging also. We have always been, the idea of the VAST has always been a trans-departmental institution. That means we are responsible for every department and because the topic LGBTIQ, sorry, the topic LGBTIQ is not just one that fits to one apartment, but covers everything else. We are instruction bound. We're not independent. Many institutions, or if there are such offices as ours, they're always happy if they're not dependent. We are instruction bound at the very moment. We are subordinate, as I said, to the current vice mayor and the city councillor for education, youth integration, transparency, and markets. Markets, it means the Viennese markets where you can buy food, not the stock market. We are only 4 people. We started out with 2.5. So we have 1 secretary and 3 people who are doing all the workshops and all the works, and we have 1 head. So we are very much cooperating with different departments, with the financing department, with the department for schools, for human rights, and so on. And they also help us out with staff. Our tasks, just briefly, we'll get into that, of course, in a greater detail, is client work, also sharing information with whoever might ask, doing education and conferences, annual conferences, studies, also scientific studies to prove the need for improvement. We do fundings and a lot of networking. Also, the networking is very important in all that task I just mentioned. We have that on different levels, be it local, national, or transnational. I'm going to also talk about the RCN network a bit later. I'm pretty sure you're already aware of it. If not, there's a link on the reference. Also an interesting network that kind of does a bit what you introduced at the very beginning, what you were doing, what the DiGiN project is doing, just on the level of LGBTIQ, but of course in an intersectional way of thinking of the world. What does the city do? That will be the next slide. Thank you. What does the city do for LGBTIQ mainstreaming, meaning internal procedures within the City of Vienna. It's kind of difficult to isolate the internal to the external, because society kind of works in a more moving way. Not just there's the city and there are the people, but they kind of intertwine somehow. But nonetheless, I was able to isolate some things that just the City of Vienna is kind of are exclusively placeable to the City of Vienna, also the administration. That is, for example, the Vienna Anti-Discrimination Act. That would be a law. Above this law would be the federal law, but then right away there are the laws of the other smaller countries that Austria consists of, and one country is Vienna. And we do have an Anti-Discrimination Act of the year 2004, very much following the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU, of course, and also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And explicitly, it's already containing sexual orientation and gender identity at a very early stage of law. Very often, gender identity was not included, and very often also at that time, sexual orientation was left out. But the Anti-Discrimination Act already focuses on that too, among other things. There are training courses for all employees that if you start working within the city's administration borders, kind of, you have to do trainings. And so we also offer trainings for employees and companies of the City of Vienna, and also external institutions, that would be universities, for example. And everyone who works for the city also has to do an ethics course and other stuff, also learning about the structures. And a tiny part of it is also anti-discrimination and the attitude of the city that there should be no discrimination whatsoever, also not against LGBTIQ. We do have a gender inclusive language guide with suggestions, suggesting to include intersex people in the language. The German language differs a bit from the English, so we have male and female versions of every noun, and when you start from two genders, it's not enough. So we try to, I don't know whether you are familiar with the asterisk. That would be that little star that we use in German frequently. So in that gender inclusive language guide of the City of Vienna, there are suggestions and recommendations how to use an all-inclusive language so that addresses, so everyone is addressed. It is not mandatory. And we made we asked other cities from the Rainbow Cities Network whether they had such language guides, for example. And most of those guides, if they had any, were also not compulsory. They were also just recommendations. I'll get to that point a bit later on. We have institutions for complaints. The VAST, our office, is one institution you can go to if you have a complaint within the City of Vienna. So if you're facing discrimination, you can go to various offices. One of them is the VAST. Some other offices are the Women's Services, or there's an independent office. It's called Civil Servant Protection Commissioner. You can go to different ombudsman offices. So there are some structures that are dealing explicitly with complaints from the staff, from heads, from whoever works for the City of Vienna. And if you include everyone working for the city, like in a narrow in a narrow picture and a broader picture, we're talking about 70,000 people working for the city. For the city administration, there would be like 30,000. And if you add the healthcare department, which is also run by the city, or many parts of it are run by the city, then we have a bit less than 70,000 people. So there are a lot of people who could come and complain with a complaint and could address us and ask us for help. Overall, one could say that it is a mediative approach. Although there is an Anti-Discrimination Act and that is a law, it also functions as a law, we recommend nonetheless a mediative approach always. So the structures for complaints and how to deal with them would first to talk to everyone involved, also so that people do not lose their jobs and that the structures would be better. So, but if nothing else works, we have to recommend also using the law and suing. Some people also sue. The overall attitude is, and that's also true for LGBTIQ, also improving LGBTIQ within the city of Vienna and within the Vienna as a land, as a country. Vienna sees itself as a learning institution. The good governance means that you try to improve your structures, your services. So Vienna sees itself as a service provider, and if you see yourself as a service provider, you try to improve it. The good governance is, of course, a very neoliberal system, but still, if you have a complaint and if you're saying LGBTIQ are not treated well in this or that occasion, then you can tell that, and the city would be interested in improving that. So that's a kind of an attitude thing. The next slide, I tried to focus on the overlapping of what we could call society and state. So things that are initiated and provided and invited by the city, and also where a lot of work for it is done by the city, within the city, but there's a lot of output for externals. So what we do every year is during Pride Month, we raise the rainbow flag on the city hall, and there are a lot of departments that participate. So you can really order the flags within the city of Vienna, and the city of Vienna also organize it, hanging it. So they provide the people, the flags and everything. So they produce it. Also the Progress Pride flag and BIPOC flag. So that one, that the city of Vienna participates in the visibility, of LGBTIQ and not trying to have to hide. So Vienna understands itself as a rainbow city, and it's also representing it. Next Monday, we will also hang the red ribbon flag, for example, at the city hall. So we have various things where visibility, the city of Vienna participates in the visibility thought. There are also like billboards. That's the example. A billboard when you're driving in south of Vienna this year for a couple of months, we had a billboard saying, live your life, and if you have troubles, contact the VAST. So it was also kind of a commercial, but it also adds to visibility. And schools are also invited to participate. Every director of every school can agree on hanging a flag. We have pedestrian zones on the floor, where you don't have the zebra crossings, but the zebra crossings are made in rainbow color or in trans color. So that's all initiated by the city. You only ask the city to do it, and then the city, shares the material, the staff that paints it, and so on. the city of Vienna very actively tries to place itself as a queer-friendly workplace. So there is, for example, a queer job market fair, and the city of Vienna we do have an info booth as well, but the city of Vienna itself also has a booth, the personal office, saying you can work at the city. We're happy if queer people work at the city. And that does also sound a message, of course. As I already said, we're doing a lot of studies, for example. So we're initiating a dialogue between the city of Vienna, between the city and the people. And all those studies also include questions on how people feel the city of Vienna is providing the services for them. So that is a very essential thing to initiate dialogue, I think, because if you do not know what people are thinking, then you can't improve anything. So, and it led to, for example, those studies, various studies led to queer inclusive retirement homes, to homeless assistance, to queer youth center. Like last year, we opened the first queer youth center in Vienna. In Berlin, there have been 3 already, and there was an old one in Cologne, so we checked out them first, but now we have one too. And as I said, the study results are included in improving the city structures. We explicitly also invite NGOs to participate in EU projects, and we are supporting them. That means there is a lot of financial support from the EU. There will also be another strategy starting from 2026 to 2030, focusing on LGBTIQ, and within that group on the most vulnerable, also like teen, trans, inter, and non-binary people and rainbow families. The call is not out yet, but we actively encourage NGOs to, participate in the call, because with that money, you can initiate a lot of projects within the city and around, because you know that you need more than one city for an EU project. Those were the internal, external procedures that the city of Vienna deals with, or a couple of them. I would then switch to the next one that deals with the permanent practices and concrete activities. So I have more examples now than before that. I divided it into permanent and event-driven, as I said at the very beginning. I think it's very, very important to try to have permanently things, so that you have every year stuff. And of course, we get a lot of questions with whether to participate in a project. As you, for example, asked us to participate, that would be event-driven, so that would be a one-time thing. But it is very important to have the structures, for example, for lectures and workshops, that you are there repeatedly. So we do workshops, lectures every year. I am, for example, at the University for Healthcare. So every bachelor that studies healthcare in Vienna sees me at least 8 hours. That is not much, but they have to learn a lot more, of course. That is necessary for being a good healthcare taker. But at least we are every year within the structure of the education, or the school, that the university that people go to become teachers. So we are also in their schedule. We're hosting conferences every year. So every year the City Hall hosts a conference for LGBTIQ. And every year around the CSD, the Rainbow Parade. It is called the Rainbow Parade, Rainbow Parade in Vienna. So the Rainbow Parade happens every year, and every year City Hall Square is also opened up for the Rainbow Village. That is also part of the visibility thing that we do. Yeah, permanent practices is always also very much focusing around the Pride Month. The public transport system always, participates, very often writes then, when you're waiting for the train, we ride with pride. At the very moment, there is 16 days against violence against women. So they also participate, making like a stop against violence and so on. So they also participate. Then we have several things like the Monument Arcus that commemorates people who have been persecuted during the Nazi regime. So just to name two. We have an annual conference that is very much based on scientific studies. And every year we invite politicians and NGOs on different topics. This year's topic was our study on that is called Queer in Vienna 2, a very long questionnaire that like more people answered than the FRA studies, the Fundamental Rights Agency studies. So there were 5,000 people answering the call for the questionnaire, and we asked people how they feel in Vienna and how their life, what would they need to improve their lives and so on. And one part also was, of course, the question of how happy queer people are in Vienna with the services and how they are treated as LGBTIQ. We initiate roundtables. That's also every year with the police and NGOs, so that NGOs can speak with the police directly. We also have someone from the Ministry of Interior showing the latest statistics of hate crime. Hate crime is also, LGBTIQ is also included in the hate crime report, the annual report that comes out every year. So there are different roundtables that bring people together, and also NGOs and politicians and the administration. We have queer city talks that's on different topics. This year we had various queer city talks where we invited someone from Uganda, for example, and that person talked to the public within the city hall about the situation, which is really a very alarming situation at the very moment, or on the ongoing hostile climate that LGBTIQ are facing, not just outside of Europe, but also within Europe. So that's an example for queer city talks, where different topics are there every year. Every year we have an open house, so you can really just open the door downstairs and come up. And last year there was a whole school class coming. Well, suddenly like 30 people standing there, but we also managed that quite well. And one teacher just came with 2 classes, and that was also fun. But it's open to the public. Anyone can come. Sometimes people from other departments come, from political parties, from NGOs, and we just and share whatever topic that comes up with people. We have ongoing cooperations constantly every year with different departments. We have to do that because we're such a small office. And we have an 4th time happening employee meeting group. So people who work in Vienna and define themselves as queers or queer allies, or whoever wants to come, just join us for meetings. So what's the time? Well, do I have some more minutes? I'll try to make it quick.
Yes, we
Okay.
have up to 7 more minutes, let's say. So we have
Okay. All right. Thank
good
you.
20-25 minutes Q&A. Thank you.
All right. So the next slide will be on, to remind you, I divided into permanent practices, which are very important because they're very sustainable. But of course, someone gets to us, writes an email and says, I need a workshop for all our teachers in the school because they have difficulties, have no idea how to deal, how to treat well trans kids, although there are so many, or we have a topic on religion and LGBTIQ because teachers feel not comfortable with how to deal with or have not dealt with the topic and need help. So all kinds of things, all kinds of people that ask us for anything within the city of Vienna, outside the city of Vienna. We, depending on who has a case of discrimination and it comes to us, we suggest different ways, and that can be anything, for improving a structure in an office or a department to just, individually going away with a person that is that this particular person can go to improve the life and to lessen this discrimination. So of course that can be anything. We're doing cooperations. I mentioned the European Song Contest. We're also part of that, the Vienna City Marathon. We're doing this year a water station with an NGO and with the water department and with us and with some other departments. So that's the Gay Games happened 2024. That was a one-time thing. They, every year they're another city. So last year they were here. We are an office that has to report and share information with whoever asks. That can be the mayor, that can be different departments, that can be political parties saying, I'm not happy with this and that project, and we have to report about that. Yeah, we also do info tables. You could ask us to if we have the time to participate in, for example, health street fair, and we come there with an info table and talk to whoever comes along. Very important, that will be the next slide, is the finances. I know this is a very difficult topic for very many cities at the very moment. Not just the cities, also the people and the NGOs. Unfortunately, we're not, floating in money, and the city of Vienna is also not. But it is, of course, very important to have some finances. Without any financial support, many projects would not happen. I do not know whether you recall the Live Ball that happened until 2019. That was an organization focusing on AIDS victims and has been in the news in various countries because there were people like, I don't know, Sharon Stone and so invited. So as I said, the Rainbow Parade is financed by the City of Vienna. The Pride Village is financed by the City of Vienna. And there is an annual financial support for many, many institutions. Institutions like a Rainbow Family Center, like a Queer Base, that's an organization dealing with people who queer people who are looking for asylum here. The Queer Youth Center is fully funded by the City of Vienna, and there are various projects that would not exist if the funding was not there from the city. So that is very important. We have a funding system, an additional funding system where people can answer calls. So we have 2 calls per year, and every project runs for a year. At this time, there are 2 open calls. Like one is the Rainbow Month pot and the Queer Small Project pot. So NGOs can just answer that call and ask for money, and if they can get money. I don't know, you probably have not heard, but the Tuntat loan has been supported by the city financially also, and was just a couple of months ago named UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage. So that's an institution that goes out to the public, and they do like iron throwing, like the ironing that you do your clothes with, and you know, to get an interaction with the public. As I said, we're initiating studies. Studies do need money. I mean, there is a lot of voluntary and unpaid work also within the queer community, but studies, if you want them made properly, you have to finance. So Queer in Vienna already said there was a study 10 years ago, and now we have new study coming out in next week or the following. On youth, recently we had a study on the elderly, on healthcare, and so on. So if you don't finance it, you don't have the material to say what should be improved, because all those studies show the issues where the improvement should happen. That also needs financed material, booklets, brochures, education boxes. Very quickly, but that would be a very important topic. Maybe we can discuss that afterwards. How to mobilize staff and change agents. That's a very difficult task always to do. We are actively inviting departments. That means a lot of networking and a lot of also, getting to know the people and people knowing you, so that if there is an issue or if they just have the feeling they want to do workshops, they know how to go, where to go. Offering trainings very often. That's the unfortunate condition. Those trainings are very often consumed by staff that are already interested in the topic. So I guess it should be more compulsory to learn more about ethics, human rights, and everything that goes along with it. A big part is making sense, explaining why the change is important, and how you can do it so that people are not afraid of the change. So to make a plan and say, we're going to open up a bit, because every system builds on trust, and it's also always a bit scary if you change it. We have to initiate dialogues between political parties and getting heads on board. If the heads are not on board, it's very difficult to mobilize everyone. And taking feedback seriously. So if you try to mobilize staff and they're telling you what should be done, and you don't listen to them, that also doesn't make sense. So I don't have much time anymore, right? There's one slide, the references slide. You can look up yourself.
We can continue. Yes.
I would really suggest to, if you get a speed ticket, you might stop speeding or overrunning people with 100 miles an hour on the street. Some people need the compulsory thing, because if it's voluntary, everyone races through the city. Same here. As unfortunate as it is, but already said, heads needed. So there is top down and bottom up, surveys, very important. Focus on elementary education and train the trainers. So we're doing very many multipliers to reach as many people as possible. Anonymous complaint boxes and a very strict structure that what will happen to your complaint. If you throw something in a box and nothing is happening, then you're not participating. And you have to do money. One more thing, as I said, and independence offices would be fine for the complaints and taking complaints seriously. RCN, as I said, that is also on the last page. They do already have a Rainbow Cities in Action policy guide, so every city can look up what other rainbow cities suggest as best practice examples. So that is not uninteresting for you. Thanks a lot. I know I consumed the time. Hope If there are any questions, just ask.
No, Helga, you were within time. Thank you so much for this insightful presentation.